class. We're going to continue on with the nervous system, and specifically today we're going to look at the autonomic nervous system. Before we get started with the autonomic nervous system, I kind of want to talk about the somatic nervous system, because if we look at the PNS divides off of this as part of the nervous system, and it divides into two things. On your thing, it said somatic, and then over here we have the autonomic. So somatic, we've kind of been covering this all along. We do a lot of examples with somatic. This is what's going to be voluntary, so voluntary. And the other thing about somatic is it usually goes to your skeletal muscles, since that's what you guys can control. So we don't hit up on somatic because those are the two most important things to understand about somatic: voluntary and skeletal. What is very important is autonomic, because autonomic has a lot more stuff that we can talk about. We can talk about the difference between somatic and autonomic, and then we can delve into other subdivisions. So that kind of gives you the brief subdivision. Autonomic nervous system, which is over here on the right, is abbreviated ANS, so you don't have to keep spelling it out. These consist of only motor nerves. So remember, motor nerves, they leave the CNS. So these take orders from your brain or your spinal cord and send them out. These are going to things that control the body automatically, hence the name autonomic. It's also known as the involuntary nervous system, since it controls things that are involuntary. Things that it can help control that are done automatically are things like your cardiac muscle, so it helps make sure your heart's pumping. Smooth muscle, such as your stomach, it helps propel things down your digestive tract. And then other things like glands, that glands usually love to release hormones. So hormones are released all the time, and you don't have to tell your body to do that, such as hormones to break down food within your stomach. Now, even though all body systems contribute to homeostasis, that internal balance that you have, that stability of the internal environment, it actually largely depends on the autonomic nervous system, because that autonomic nervous system has connections to every other body system within your body. At every single moment, at every single fleeting moment, signals are continuously being sent to the central nervous system, and the autonomic nervous system is continuously making those adjustments that the central nervous system is taking in. For example, if you are cold, what happens is your body sends a message to your CNS. Your CNS says, I'm cold, and it causes your ANS to send out motor fibers or motor signals to have blood shunted. So shunted means directed elsewhere. So if you're cold, it likes to send all your blood to your internal things that require heat. So you want all the blood to go toward your heart or towards your lungs, to more needy areas. Or maybe more areas need more oxygen, such as maybe if you're in a fight or flight, you're trying to run, it tries to divert blood to your muscles so you can get more oxygen to undergo cellular respiration. The other things that the autonomic nervous system can do is it can control your heart and breathing rate to either speed up or slow down depending on the situation, to maintain homeostasis. Are you getting enough blood and oxygen everywhere? Are you breathing in enough oxygen to replenish the oxygen that you're using? Are you getting rid of enough carbon dioxide that you're building up? Blood pressure can be adjusted. Again, the autonomic nervous system even controls stomach secretions. Do I need to secrete things to start breaking down food, or should I not, and we can break down food later? Now we're going to compare the somatic and the autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system, we have the motor neuron cells are originated inside the CNS. So these cell bodies are located within the brain or the spinal cord. And once you have these cell bodies, so remember a neuron, you guys tell me it looks like a frog, but meow, meow, and it's got little legs on it. Here's your cell body, and then here's your axon. This axon actually extends to whatever skeletal muscles that are being served. So remember, somatic goes to skeletal muscles, and these are voluntary. You control these. Autonomic nervous system, instead of just having one motor neuron, it has two motor neurons to get to where it needs to get to. The two motor neurons are called preganglionic. So pre means the first one. Postganglionic. So post is the second one. So this is the first one. Here's the second one. Your preganglionic neuron is in the brain or the spinal cord. So it's within the CNS. The postganglion neuron comes out of the CNS and extends to whatever organ that you need to go to, such as your stomach or maybe to your liver or to your bile duct. There's two arms to the autonomic nervous system, or two subdivisions. The first one is sympathetic and the second one is parasympathetic. Here, this picture helps explain a lot. Here you have the somatic nervous system. Here it shows that the cell body, right here, is located within the central nervous system. Once it leaves the central nervous system, the axon is in your peripheral nervous system. And notice here that there's only one neuron, or one motor neuron. And once you get down here, it releases acetylcholine to go to skeletal muscles. The autonomic nervous system is quite different. You notice these three pictures are completely different than the first one. The first major difference is there's two axons. There's a preganglionic and a postganglionic. The other thing I want you to notice about the difference between them is the effector organs that they mess with. Somatic is your skeletal, whereas autonomic is all your smooth things like your stomach, your glands, and your cardiac. The last thing I want you to notice in this picture is the type of neurotransmitter that's used. For somatic nervous system, to your skeletal muscles, it's acetylcholine. That's your that's your neurotransmitter. But when you get down to your autonomic, they use acetylcholine, but they also use norepinephrine or epinephrine or other different things or other different neurotransmitters. So as previously stated, we're going to go into a little bit more about these subdivisions now. The autonomic nervous system is divided into your sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. Both of these actually serve the same organ, they just have opposite effects, or they counterbalance each other. The sympathetic nervous system mobilizes the body during extreme situations like fear, exercise, rage. It gets your heart pumping, it gets your eyes dilated, it gets your skin flushed. Whereas parasympathetic, this allows us to unwind and conserve energy. So this is when you're relaxing and your body's digesting the food you have in your stomach and you don't have to breathe very hard. So parasympathetic is like you're resting. So let's go through the anatomy of the parasympathetic division first. If we look at our parasympathetic division, it's known as the craniosacral division. So that's one of the three names it can go by. The reason it's called a craniosacral division is because of where the preganglionic neurons originate. So remember, preganglionic are the first ones. They originate or come from the cranial nerves 3, 7, 9, and 10. So hence the name cranial. They also originate from your S2 to your S4 region. So S stands for the sacral. So from the second sacral vertebrae to the fourth sacral vertebrae regions of your spinal cord. So cranial, sacral. Now, if we talk about these two regions specifically, your cranial regions likes to send axons out of your cranial nerves to your head and neck organs. Now, within your head and neck, these preganglionic neurons synapse to a motor neuron within something known as your terminal ganglia. So preganglionic, it has to reach the first of that terminal, so the terminal. From there, the postganglionic, or the ones that come last, extends into whatever organs that it needs to reach to. So does it need to reach to the heart? Does it need to reach to the lungs? Sacral region, your preganglionic axon, so remember pre is first, they leave the spinal cord and they actually form something known as pelvic splanchnic nerves. Because think about your sacrum region or your sacrum bone is located near your hips, your pelvic. Now these pelvic splanchnic nerves also are called pelvic nerves, and they help travel to the pelvic cavity. And once inside that cavity, that's where your preganglionic synapse or joins with your postganglionic neurons that go to whatever they need to serve within the lower body. So here, if we're going to look at your parasympathetic versus sympathetic, you can see where they synapse at. So here, this is a picture that helps illustrate, hey, your parasympathetic, over here, it comes out of your cranial, so cranial, and then here we also have it coming out of our sacral. So cranial, sacral. A parasympathetic can affect eye, salivary glands, heart, lungs, even down in your stomach, pancreas, liver, and gallbladder, your bladder, and even your genitals. The second one we're going to talk about is the sympathetic division. So sympathetic is not cranial sacral. Then the other name for it is thoracolumbar, because it originates from the thoracic region and the lumbar region of our spinal cord. So preganglionic neurons originate in the first thoracic vertebrae to the second lumbar of the spinal cord. And axons, what happens is they leave the spinal cord in something known as a ventral root. They enter the spinal nerves, and then they go to the ramus that we learned about last section. So spinal cord to nerve, spinal cord to ventral root to spinal nerve to ramus. Axons then pass through with something called a ramus communicans, and they enter with something called a sympathetic trunk ganglion. And in the trunk, this actually lies pretty close to the spinal cord. Now, there are two paths that it could take once it gets into the sympathetic trunk. The first path that it can take is after synapsing, the axon can synapse with a second neuron at the same or a different level. And then what happens is that postganglionic axon re-enters the spinal cord and travels to wherever it needs to go. For example, the skin. The second way is the preganglionic neuron passes through the ganglion without synapsing. So the first one, it says it can synapse. This one says without synapsing. And in fact, it just goes on to form the splanchnic nerves. And then down there, they travel to the collateral ganglion, which serves your abdominal and pelvic organs. So here, if we're going to look at this, it originates, all of these, from the thoracic region. And they all, down here, they originate from the lumbar region. And they serve things like your eye, skin, salivary, lung, heart, stomach, pancreas, liver, and gallbladder, adrenal, bladder, and genitals. Here, this picture explains the two pathways that sympathetic nervous system can go. Here I'm following a red. If I follow it and follow it, what happens is there are two pathways. So I should stop and start again. So let's focus on this. Here's one. If it goes out the ventral ganglion. Here it pairs up, and here's your spinal nerve. Once it goes, it divides again to your ramus. It goes through your ramus communicans, so that's right here. And then from there, it doesn't have to synapse. It can go directly and turn into your splanchnic nerve and go directly to whatever organ that it needs to go to. So the second way is here. It can go, goes through your spinal nerve, divides into your ramus, go through your ramus communicans. Here, it can just affect an organ at the same level, or it can move up a level and go up your spinal cord or down your spinal cord to reach other regions of your body. So over here, it's going to reach the upper regions of your skin. So that's the end of today's lesson. Let me know if you have any questions, and I hope you guys have a good day.